drop and give me 25. I'm the gunny.
It's time for the gunny.
The quarterdeck. Lights. Get online right now. You got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, my bunch of knuckle-dragging, beer-drinking, hard-charging devil dogs. You're listening to The Quarterdeck. I am your host, Miguel, the Gunny Signs.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Quarterdeck. I am Miguel, the Gunny Signs. This week on The Quarterdeck, we're going to go ahead and continue with our reading of our book, With the 1st Marine Division in Iraq of 2003, No Greater Friend, No Worst Enemy. And if you didn't join us last week we talked about personnel issues and how all the individuals were actually going to be assigned to all the units, and how was the division actually going to maintain the integrity of having all the individuals there that had the knowledge, the skills, and were the experts in their MOS, their Marine Occupational Specialty, to ensure that the division had the most personnel that were the best for that kind of situation for them to get in there. So whatever their job was, they were going through that issue, and they were making sure that all the personnel were there to ensure that all the units had everybody that they needed in order to get into that combat environment. Now this week, we're going to talk about public affairs. How was public affairs going to play a role in everything that was going on with the division now that they were preparing to actually head into country and head into Iraq? In this week's Hero Highlight, we're going to take a look at Colonel Jefferson J. DeBlanc, United States Marine Corps from Lockport, Louisiana, who was born on 15 February of 1921. We're going to check out and see what his actions were in order for him to get awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. The Quarterdeck. Can we believe that we're already on the 9th of February? Today is also a very special day here in our household because today is my son's birthday. He is turning the big 1-2, 12 years old. Hard to believe that it's 12 years ago that I was down there in Afghanistan in Bob Zerbugi in Kajaki in the Helmand Province over there in Afghanistan when he was born. I know that I talked to you guys a lot about when he was born, that I was deployed out there, and I never really got an opportunity to see the little man until I came stateside. But it's hard to believe that it's been 12 years. Man, where the heck does time go? And that's one of the things, especially being on active duty, being in any branch of service in the military, is that you miss so many things. Some of the things that we take for granted. And those of you that are in the service, that were in the service, or veterans, you know exactly what I mean. I cannot even count how many birthdays, how many anniversaries, how many holidays, Christmases, New Year's, all those things that I missed because of deployments and of commitments that I had throughout the Marine Corps to make sure that the mission was going to be accomplished. And that's some of the things that, you can never get back. You can never make those events up or anything like that, school plays or recitals of any kind or things like that. Those are a lot of the things that, because of me being on active duty and due to the fact that my older daughters that really didn't live in the same state that I did, they were in a whole different complete state. So it was difficult for me to actually have enough time without being deployed in order for them to come and visit, because some of the times when I was home, they were in school, so they couldn't get the time to get away or anything like that. So I had to kind of make time during the summer when I could in order for me to see them. I'm thankful now that I am retired that I'm actually be able to communicate with them a lot more frequently, and our relationship is getting much better, and we're becoming closer because now we have the time. But now with my son, I have the great opportunity to be able to watch him grow, watch him do all these different things. One thing that I can remember is like, oh my goodness, when I signed him up to play t-ball. Those of you that have had the opportunity to see a bunch of little 3-4-year-old kids play t-ball, it is the most hilarious thing that you will ever see. And these memories are some of the memories that are going to stick around for a while. And we're going to be able to actually look back at those and watch and see the little videos, the pictures of those moments, because they're priceless. And those are a lot of things that being on active duty and being in the military that you unfortunately have to miss. And the household is being held up by your significant other, your spouse, your wife. They're the ones that are actually holding the household down, and they're so used to doing everything on their own that by the time the service member gets back, it's different. It's harder because they're so used to doing all that on their own, being independent. So coming back in, a lot of people don't seem to realize how hard it actually is for them to be united again and actually have their relationship continue to the way that it was before that they actually left, because it is hard. It's difficult to be able to do all the same things that you did when you were there together. And now that you're back, those things have to be relearned, and you have to realize how you're going to be there living together again because you've been gone for so long. And with your kids being really, really young, it's not that hard of a thing for you to be gone and then come back, because they really don't miss that much of that aspect. Now, in my case, yes, of course, my son was born when I was gone. He was only 3 months, so really didn't have an understanding of why his dad was gone. I mean, I've seen him in video. I got an opportunity to kind of talk to him on video. He didn't know who the heck I was. I mean, he's probably wondering, like, who the hell is talking to me? I don't know who that is. But when I got back and he was 3 months old, it's the same kind of concept. He really didn't understand or know, where the heck I've been and stuff like that. But now, once he started getting older, he was 3.5, almost 4 years old when I retired from active duty service. I can still remember when I stayed back in Oklahoma when I was about to retire. I stayed back for the last 4 months. I lived back in the barracks, and my wife and my son came back to California to allow us to actually save up the last couple of months of housing allowance to make sure that we were able to get a house and everything else once I retired. So I wasn't there. So he didn't see me. We talked on video. We talked over the phone and stuff. But I never realized, how hard it really is on the military child when their parent leaves for a long period of time. I mean, for me, it was only 3 months. It was only 3 months when I flew back because I had to do an interview for a job that I was applying for now that I was about to retire down here in Arizona. I flew from Oklahoma to over here. My wife did not tell my son that I was coming. She told him that they were going to go to the airport and they're going to watch some of the planes land and watch them take off, so he had an opportunity to see the planes. Of course, any young child is excited because they were never really gone to the airport. He has before in the past, but he was way too young to actually remember what it was like. But I remember getting off of that plane. My wife had just told him that, they were there to watch the planes and watch the people get off the plane and see how excited they were to come up and watch them with their suitcase and all that stuff and everything. Well, they were sitting there on the window watching everybody come off. And, I remember my wife, she told him, hey, let's go and let's see who gets off the plane and see where they're going. So they started walking over there, and I got off the plane. I came out through the actual entranceway down there from the terminal, and I start walking over towards him. And I can see him kind of looking at me and stuff like that because I had a hat on my backpack. And then I'm like, hey, buddy, what's going on, little man? And he ran towards me, and the look on his face, I can tell you guys, it was freaking priceless. Because he just gave me the world's biggest hug, and I can see his little eyes were tearing up because he was just so excited that he saw me. And, that meant the world to me, because all those years in the past that I missed of opportunities like that. But now I had the opportunity to do it now. And sometimes, I look at it and I'm like, man, that's not fair. It's not fair to my other kids because I was never there to enjoy these moments or these opportunities with them. But I'm just thankful now that I'm able to actually do that now. And, it's important. It's important that we get the opportunity to spend all this time with our family and stuff, even when you're on active duty. I know that for the longest time, I put the Marine Corps first. The Marine Corps was my priority, and then came my family. And that's not the right way to look at it. And I realize that now. And, if I can go back and I can take the opportunity to redo things, oh God, by all means, I would definitely go back and redo all these things, because to me, it's very important now that I see that. And I can think about now, if my son, now that he's turning 12, he would have to go through a deployment with me being gone. it would be very difficult on them because he's just so used to me being home and be able to share the days with him. I mean, he's getting into the teenage years. He's a preteen now. So, of course, he's getting to that time frame that he kind of wants to be off doing his own little thing, even though he's here at home and stuff, but he wants to do his own thing and stuff like that. And, you know, it's a changing world. You know, when I was young and when I was his age, hey, we didn't have no cell phones. We didn't have all these video games growing up. Kids today, they have all these things. And, you know, me being a dad, you know, I want to make sure that my kids have everything that I never had when I was growing up. Let me tell you guys, that was a lot. A lot of things that he has, I wouldn't even think about having when I was a kid because I just didn't have that opportunity to have all those things. And, you know, so I want to make sure that he has them. And sometimes I can think of, you know, yes, am I spoiling him? I guess I am. But now I'm starting to get to the point where I actually make him work for things. And if he wants something, he's got to do some stuff in order to get it. Lately, his thing is that whenever I have him come outside with me or have him do certain things around the house, his first thing that comes out of his mouth is, well, how much am I getting paid for this? And I have to break his little heart and have to tell him, like, look, dude, just because you got to do things around the house doesn't mean you're getting paid for these things. You got to work hard to make sure that we take care of ourselves, we take care of our house, and we make sure that we have the things that we need here at home. I tell him, do you like having nice things? Do you like having a home to be able to live in and enjoy every single day? Just because people ask you to do things doesn't mean you're going to get paid for them, especially here in the house. We got to do things together here. Now he's responsible for taking out the trash, bringing the trash can back in, taking out the recycling, bringing it back in. That's his responsibility. Now, to ensure that he remembers, back when I was a teenager and I was younger, I used to just kind of have to remember. I do remember that we used to write things on a calendar and stuff like that just to remind me to do certain things, but I don't ever remember people reminding me to do certain things. I just had to go do it. I had to do it, and if I forgot, I got in trouble for not doing it. Same thing goes with him. Like I tell him, if he doesn't do certain things or he forgets to do things, then he's not going to get the opportunity to enjoy the things that he wants to do on the weekend. Kids nowadays, that's playing video games. My son is only allowed to play video games on the weekends, and that is if his weekly report from school has to be a good report. He can't get in trouble. His grades cannot be dropping. Period. Up until now, and he's in junior high now, he's a sixth grader, he's got nothing but A's and B's in all his report cards. That has been going on here as well now. He's in his third quarter now of junior high, and he's been maintaining his grades. Until this week when I got his progress report, his grades kind of dropped. And it's not because he's not capable of doing the things. And most kids, and you guys know this, most kids are the exact same way that they choose to do certain things or not do certain things. Now, every day I can go on there on an application they call Parent View, and I can see his daily assignments, and I can see if he's turned them in, what he scored on these assignments, because the teachers are graded them. So, hey, there's no way that a kid is going to get away with not turning stuff in. I used to remember that a lot of my friends when I was growing up, they used to get home right away because a lot of the times the report cards were mailed to the parents, and they would get home to get the mail, to get the report card prior to their parents grabbing them, and they tried to hide it. Now, sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't work because, hey, the parents knew that they were coming in, and they would ask, hey, when is your report card going to get mailed in? I haven't seen it. And, you know, that was the thing. Like, for me, when I was growing up, I had to get everything A, B's, and C's. Nothing lower than a C or I would get in trouble. And kind of the same thing I go with my son. I tell him, look, a C is okay. It's average, but you're better than that. You're better than that because I know you're capable of doing it. And what I came to find out is that a lot of his grades that dropped a little bit below a B is because either he didn't turn in assignments or he did the assignment, he rushed through them and he got a very low score. Now with the teachers today, they allow him to redo some of his homework. He can go back and redo it to get a better grade. But he's lazy. Just like most of the kids today, they're lazy and they don't want to go back and do these things. Well, that's one thing that I tell them. You will go back and redo these assignments. You're going to do them. And because some of the things, like, well, it's so long that I did this assignment, I don't remember how to do it. And too bad, so sad. That's not my problem. So I always tell them, like, you better ask your teacher to give you a refresher or something to ensure you do these things. Because a lot of the things that he does now and the things that they're teaching him in classes today, especially math, good God, those things are above my head because I look at them and they go, zoom, they go above my head because I don't know how to do these things. The process and the method that they're teaching him now, it's completely different than what I learned when I was in school. And shoot, I had a hard time learning some of this stuff in school myself. And now they expect me to do it with him and learn this stuff. So I kind of depend on him to show me how to do a lot of these stuff because I have no clue. Thank God for YouTube, because you can YouTube anything nowadays. And, I'm able to see some videos of how to do certain things, so that way I learn how to do them with him. So that's the point that I want to get across this week, and I want to share with you guys, because family is very, very important. You meet a lot of people throughout the Marine Corps, throughout the service, throughout the times that you're there, and you meet a lot of good friends, and, you don't have the opportunity to actually keep in contact with them unless you come really close to a lot of these individuals. And I've had plenty of them that I've had throughout the Marine Corps, and I still keep in contact with them because, it's like family, like brothers from another mother, like I always call them. I got my best friend that I have that lives down here in San Diego. His brother is now over there in Texas, but we were really close. We communicate with each other still till this day. We talk to each other. We call each other on our birthday every single year. Now, if I was a lot closer and we're able to visit each other, we would do that as much as we possibly could. Having my best friend so close down there in San Diego, about 3 hours away from me, we try to come and see each other as much as we can. He's been down here to Yuma. I've been down there to San Diego, but we stay in touch. We communicate over the phone constantly, all the time. And that's something that we're going to continue on, because it's just the kind of relationship that we had. Heck, just the other day, I had one of my other friends, my roommate, as a matter of fact, the roommate that I had when I met my wife. He called me out of the blue the other day. He just said he wanted to call me and see how I was, because he watched my video podcasting, and he's like, you kind of look a little sad on the podcast. So I wanted to call you and check up on you to see how you were doing. And everything's going good, and he's doing great. His family is growing. And when we were roommates, him and I met our wives at the same time. They weren't friends or anything like that, but we met him at the same time, and we were able to get our relationships even better with them. And he got married, had a son. I got married, and then we had our son. So our relationship is kind of tied together, because if it wasn't for him, and I'm grateful. So Coop, if you're listening, thank you. Because of you, I met my wife, and I am the happiest man that I have been in so many years. I always say it takes three. Third time's the charm. And by God, all the lessons that I learned up until now, all the sacrifices were worth it, because if I hadn't gone through all those things that I've gone through, I would not be here today with my wife, my son, and enjoying the best life that I can now that I'm retired from active duty service. The Quarterdeck is brought to you by Miguel Science Photography. From the beginning of your family to the first birthday and beyond, whether it's a retirement or a Marine Corps ball, Miguel Science Photography is there to make memories that will last a lifetime. Miguel Science Photography is a certified veteran-owned business. Contact them at miguelsciencephotography.com.
What we're going to do right here is go back. Way back into time.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Quarterdeck with Miguel the Gunny Science. Last week, we figured out how the division was going to go ahead and handle all of their personnel issues that they had now that they were getting ready to go ahead and have all the units with the number of personnel that they needed in order for them to actually deploy into Kuwait in preparation for their actual mission heading into Iraq. And that included the stop loss, stop move that we discussed a lot about last week. But this week, we're going to take a look at and see how the actual public affairs was going to handle everything that was going to be going on with the division now that they were getting ready to head into Iraq. If you remember a couple episodes back, we discussed and talked about how units were actually going to have reporters embedded in their units to ensure that they were able to cover all the stories of everything that was going on as the division actually progressed from Kuwait and headed into Iraq. So this week, let's go ahead and get started with talking about the public affairs and how they prepared for this huge task that they had in front of them. At this time, the 1st Marine Division Public Affairs Office, or the PAO, was informed that a large number of media personnel that had worked with the Marine Corps in Afghanistan had asked to accompany the Marine Corps should they deploy into Iraq. The PAO, led by Captain Joe Plesner, started building a positive relationship with them and putting together a by name list of requesting media to embed in the 1st Marine Division in the event of the combat operations. A retired Marine, Colonel Dick Camp, reminded the division that during the Korean War, a Saturday Evening Post journalist had accompanied a squad of Marines from Camp Pendleton through 18 months of combat. The reporter provided the American public an upfront and personal account of the sacrifices junior Marines made for their country. Now, ABC's Nightline funded a similar effort that resulted in a weekly broadcast as Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, on the nation's airways as they readied for deployment. The ratings for the show significantly increased as a result of the weekly broadcast. As the unit deployed, Nightline increased the number of broadcast episodes to 2 per week. The reports were so popular that ABC began rebroadcasting the stories on Good Morning America and other news shows. Other news outlets followed smaller division units, including a squad-sized element from the 7th Marines. The collaboration between journalist Mike Kerr, the PAO, and Fox 25 brought the fine young Marines and sailors of the 1st Marine Division right into the living room of America. The division's PAO embarked in a media blitzkrieg, hosting more than 400 reporters in 40 days. Blanketing the media with 1st Marine Division stories, the PAO put together media opportunities, often hitchhiking with the media due to the secrecy of available vehicles. In one instance, a media convoy from Camp Commando visited 1st Tank Battalion in Udari Range during a full-blown Arabian sandstorm. With visibility at least than 50 feet and battling 40 to 60 mile per hour winds, the tanks couldn't see their targets on the range. The story of the Marines operating in harsh weather and conditions carried the headlines and taught the reporters about the tendency of other young Marines and a good lesson of what to expect should they decide to embed with the divisions for combat operations. Concurrently, the division's PAO began exploring the feasibility of many TV media requests to bring along hardwired satellite transmission capable 4-wheel drive diesel desert colored vehicles and night vision qualified drivers to support their broadcasts. While embedded with the division, the PAO determined that allowing the media to use their own vehicles would benefit the division by ameliorating some of the logistical burden on the receiving units. A TV crew generally required 15 large boxes of lift and space to haul their gear, and allow the media to broadcast live on the fly in combat. The division PAO requested that 1MEF appeal the UCENTCOM prohibition on media vehicles in embedded units. Most TV media opted to assign vehicles to their embedded correspondents in the hope that the verdict would be positive and fielded the vehicles on short-term embeds with division units. On all early tests, they performed soundly. On 10 March, the division PA section met with the 80 reporters assigned to embed within tactical units at the Hilton Hotel in Kuwait City and began the media integration process. Media members were issued NBC suits, masks, and nerve agent antidote kits. They received anthrax and smallpox vaccinations and briefings on the ground rules, organizations, and missions. The Division PA section worked hard to answer hundreds of questions and ensure the media were prepared to embed. During one of the briefings, a reporter skeptically asked, "Really? How close are you going to allow me to get to the front lines?" Captain Plesner retorted, "I can put you in the back of an AAV with 18 pissed off grunts, drive you within 300 meters of the enemy objective, and send you in the assault while the Marines you are with storm the enemy's trench lines and drive their bayonets into the hearts of the enemy." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "Is he serious?" whispered one of the skittish reporters. The division would later deliver in scores. On 11 March, the division assembled their 80 reporters and transported them to LSA Matilda to integrate them into the Blue Diamond family. Each battalion assigned a Marine to be the media buddy for each correspondent. The PAO made it clear that the 1st Marine Division, the media, do not have handlers or escorts. If you want an escort, take $500 and go to Palm Springs. Here in the division, we are going to adopt you media members and show you the ropes. You're going to be part of the family. The following morning, the media, accompanied by their media buddies, the PA liaison teams, and LAVs, 7-ton trucks, and Humvees, bid their farewell to LSA Matilda and started their odyssey. The regiments and battalions each conducted their own welcome aboard and assigned the media to their tactical units. The division's PA section continued to prepare for combat operations and moved with the division main to its tactical assembly area. Early in March 19th, the division received a directive from CENTCOM Public Affairs that no media vehicles were to be allowed on the battlefield. The division PAO contacted the regiments to pass the bad news. In the chaos that ensued, units attempted to reload TV media equipment onto jam-packed tactical vehicles. Some journalists opted to stay put and follow the units in their own vehicles despite the restriction. There was an eye-opening lesson for future combat operations, as the decision made the difference between headlining on the evening news and receiving sporadic coverage at best. For example, the U.S. Army's embedded media, whose media vehicles found their way to the fight regardless of policy, dominated the airways due to their ability to broadcast on the fly. Marine embeds who relinquished the vehicles faced significant challenges in getting their product out. They eventually adapted and overcame most communication difficulties with the hard work and assistance of the Marines. Oh boy. Now, with that being said, I can tell you guys, I can remember that we had that one reporter. We had one reporter that was embedded with our unit, but it's not in the actual little battery where we have all the guns. They weren't deployed in that small of an area. The battalion. That reporter was with the battalion commander. And the battalion commander then allowed that reporter to actually be able to go and have a day or two with the actual batteries to be able to do some reports on them, on what they were doing and stuff like that. But one of the main things that we had to focus on was to make sure that this reporter was not going to impede or get in the way of anything that had to be done in order for us to complete our mission. Now, just like they said, each reporter was briefed on what they were going to be able to do, what they couldn't do, and also what they needed to know about the threat of everything that was about to happen, because they were thrown into the fight. They were told, hey, you're not going to go there. You're not going to be in the way. You're not going to be doing any of these things. You need to be prepared of what can happen and what's going to happen when you actually get in there and are embedded with these units. To some of these reporters, I can imagine this was an eye-opening experience, because not only were they going to be allowed to actually do coverage of all these news that was going to be happening as the division progressed from Kuwait and headed into Iraq, but hey, just like that public affairs officer told them, you want to know how close we're going to let you get? You want to know what we're going to let you report? They were going to get them 300 meters from the enemy, attached to this unit of pissed off Marines, going through there and attacking the enemy. So now not only were they going to be there and they're going to be that close, but now they had to abide by the mission of the Marine Rifle Squad to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy by fire and maneuver, or repel the enemy's assault by fire and close combat. Hero highlight. Another week and another great opportunity to be able to remember these great warriors, these outstanding Marines that went above and beyond to ensure that the freedom of this great nation continued to be part of our lives. This week we're taking a look at Colonel Jefferson J. DeBlanc, United States Marine Corps, Jefferson Joseph DeBlanc, who shot down 9 enemy aircraft during his 2 tours of duty in the Pacific at Guadalcanal and Okinawa and was awarded the Medal of Honor. Was born in Lockport, Louisiana on 15 February of 1921. He enlisted in the Naval Reserve as a seaman, second class, on 29 July of 1941, and received flight training at the Naval Reserve Aviation Base in New Orleans for 2 weeks, before going to Naval Air Station in Corpus Christi, Texas, to continue his training. His naval enlistment was terminated under honorable conditions on 15 October 1941, and he was appointed an aviation cadet, United States Navy Reserve. On the following day, commissioned a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps Reserve on 4 May of 1942. Second Lieutenant DeBlanc moved to San Diego to join Headquarters Squadron, 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing. In July, he was assigned to the Advanced Career Training Group, where he remained under instruction until 6 August. He was placed in the new pilot's pool until he joined the Marine Fighting Squadron 112 Marine Aircraft Wing 11, 1st Marine Aircraft Wing in October. 2 weeks later, he left for overseas and arrived at Guadalcanal on 1 November. He was promoted to first lieutenant on 19 December of 1942. On 31 January 1943, he was flying over enemy-held Columbanagra Islands in the Solomons as a section leader of 6 fighter planes of Marine Fighting Squadron 112. Their mission was to escort a strike force of dive bombers and torpedo planes out to attack Japanese surface vessels. Leading his section directly to the target, First Lieutenant DeBlanc and the strike force encountered a large number of Japanese Zeros, the premier Japanese fighter aircraft of World War II. Protecting the enemy's surface craft, immediately engaging the Zeros at 14,000 feet, he aggressively countered their repeated attempts to drive off the Marine bombers and waged fierce combat until he received a call for assistance from the dive bombers, which were under attack at 1,000 feet. Diving to that altitude, he plunged into formation of the enemy float planes and practically single-handedly disrupted their attack, thus enabling the Marine dive bombers to complete their runs on the enemy ships and to escape. His escort mission thus completed, First Lieutenant DeBlanc nevertheless remained on the scene, despite his rapidly diminishing fuel supply, and challenged the superior number of float planes. His aggressiveness against these tremendous odds paid off as he destroyed 3 of the enemy planes and dispersed the remainder. Preparing to maneuver his damaged plane back to Guadalcanal, the lieutenant had climbed aloft and set his course before he noticed 2 more Zeros closing in upon him from behind. In a short, bitterly fought contest, First Lieutenant DeBlanc sent 2 more Japanese planes crashing into the sea. However, his own plane was so badly damaged in the encounter that the new Marine ace was forced to bail out of the previously low altitude atop the trees of Japanese-held Columbanagra. Landing in the sea, First Lieutenant DeBlanc discovered that he was badly wounded in the back, arms, and legs, and that he was a long way from shore. Supported only by his life jacket, he headed for the beach. After 6 hours in the water, he crawled upon the enemy beach and for more than 2 days subsisted on coconuts while his wounds went unattended. He was found by a party of friendly natives who hid him and cared for him. The coast watcher in that locality was notified and immediately attempted to contact the Allied authorities by clandestine radio. After 15 days on Columbanagra, one of the Navy PBYs, a type of seaplane, landed in the surf off the island, and the Navy's paddled First Lieutenant DeBlanc out to it on a canoe. He was flown back to his base and to the hospital. Promoted to captain on 1 June 1943, he was transferred to Marine Fighting Squadron 122, Marine Aircraft Group 11 in July, and his return to the United States followed about 6 weeks later. Assigned to Headquarters Squadron 41, Marine Base Defense Air Group 41, Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, Santa Ana, California. He remained in that unit until December 1943, when he was transferred to Headquarters Squadron Marine Aircraft Group 32. 2 months later, he rejoined Marine Base Defense Air Group 41. After 1 month with them, the captain was assigned to Marine Fighting Squadron 461, Marine Base Defense Air Group 43 in El Centro, California. In November of 1944, Captain DeBlanc embarked upon his second tour of overseas service. He joined Marine Fighting Squadron 422 in the Marshall Islands and remained in that area until May of 1945, when he flew northward to participate in the Okinawa campaign with Marine Fighting Squadron 212. He continued operating in the Ryukyus until the end of the war, bagging one more Japanese plane to raise his total to 9. He returned to the United States again in October and was detached to Naval Air Station in Seattle, Washington. Captain DeBlanc's relief from active duty occurred on 31 December 1945. He returned to his home in St. Martinville, Louisiana, and was assigned to the 8th Marine Corps Reserve District. On 6 December 1946, Captain DeBlanc stood before President Harry S. Truman in the White House and had the Medal of Honor hung around his neck for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. He retired from the Marine Corps Reserve as a colonel on 1 July 1972, and he passed away on 22 November of 2007 of complications from pneumonia in Lafayette, Louisiana, at the age of 86. In addition to the Medal of Honor, Colonel DeBlanc holds the Distinguished Flying Cross Air Medal with 4 gold stars in lieu of 2nd through 5th awards, Purple Heart, Presidential Unit Citation with 1 bronze star, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 3 bronze stars, American Campaign Medal, and World War II Victory Medal. The Quarterdeck. Whenever we look back in our history and we take a look at some of the things that Marines did back in World War II, in Vietnam, in Korea, all those different wars, we learn about individuals and the things that they did for this country and for their fellow Marines that were fighting there beside them. In our hero highlight this week, we took a look at Colonel Jefferson J. DeBlanc, United States Marine Corps, a pilot, a hero, someone that went above and beyond his duties as a United States Marine to ensure the safety and the accomplishment of a mission that he was assigned to do. So just like this week, every week we're going to continue and take a look at these different Marines and the things that they did. Next week, we're going to take a look at Captain Robert Hugo Dunlap and see what he did to earn that Congressional Medal of Honor. This week in our reading in our book, With the 1st Marine Division in Iraq of 2003, No Greater Friend, No Worst Enemy, we took a look at how the division was going to actually embed all of these reporters into the division to allow them to be able to do the reports and the news broadcast on the accomplishment that the division was doing to ensure that the people back in the United States were aware of everything that the Marines were actually doing while they were there accomplishing the mission. What a tremendous task was put into that public affairs office and all that public affairs team that was assigned to the division to ensure that all these reporters were going to be able to do their job. But not only that, they had to be trained. They had to understand the things that they could and couldn't do. But just like they told them, they were actually going to be allowed to get in there with those Marine units, head into the combat environment, and report those things directly as they were happening. Even though their hopes and dreams were shattered because they weren't going to be allowed to bring their vehicles with all their equipment and stuff. And even though some of the units with other services like the Army and stuff, they took them anyway. But it was something that was not part of the mission, that they weren't going to be able to use them in the mission because it was going to affect the way that the division was going to actually head into that environment and accomplish the mission that they were going to be tasked for. So as we can see, we're moving along. We're getting a lot more things covered and we're learning a lot more about the division, our heroes, the highlights that we do every single week. So thank you again for joining us here on the Quarterdeck. And as a reminder, do not forget to visit our Facebook page, the Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs. Leave us your comments, leave us your questions. We'll take a look at them and make sure that we answer as many as we can and get them broadcasted here on our podcast, The Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs. So until next week, this is the Gunny sounding Liberty Call.
Get up
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.